Okay, well, how about Twitter then? When did you get on Twitter? Do you remember?
So that's a great story because, Chris Brogan is Mr. The guy made a career by being big on Twitter,
Yeah.
which is good to see because he's a great guy. So when Twitter launched, which I believe was 2006, Brogan emails me. He's like, "You got to do this Twitter thing." It's kind of like people with Ello right now. You're like, yeah, whatever. Um, and I'm like, okay. So I go over there and I look at it and I register at Copyblogger and I don't get it. I just don't get it. And so I ignore it for a year while Brogan is amassing massive
Thousands of
follower
followers.
numbers, right? It was a year later, and I went over there and looked again, and all of a sudden, I got it. I saw how people were sharing content. I saw how you could interact. I love the format too much, actually. You know when I'm bored, I'll be on Twitter making bad jokes. It's like crack. So I did get started fairly early in 2007. For those who wonder, I switched my account to @BrianClark and freed up the brand so I don't embarrass my company. So that's why my follower count is so much higher than that Copyblogger. I kept
Yeah.
my personal account. But yeah, that's how I got started. And I admit freely that at first it just seemed silly to me. But you never know. So, of course, we are staked out on Ello. I just don't really have time to do anything about
We
it.
are not. I have not made that leap.
No, you're just not even going there.
No, not at all. There's too many networks that have kind of come up like that that have lived or died. Now that I've said that, though,
It'll
it'll
blow
be
up.
the next
Yeah.
Twitter. So we'll see that next year. Cool. So, I mean, I love the story. You started out, you were a lawyer before you started Copyblogger.
Right.
And what was the business you did right before Copyblogger?
So I had actually quit practicing law in '98 to foolishly think I could make a living writing online. And for the first year, I published e-zines, remember email newsletters before blogging. And then in '99, I read Permission Marketing, and I was like, because I wanted to create content. I wanted to build audiences. I just didn't have a business model that worked. And I read Permission Marketing. I'm like, oh, you have to sell something. So I dusted off the law license and started an email newsletter about legal issues related to the internet, thinking I'll pick up a client just to live while the other business kept going. Long and short of it is the other business ended up dying, and I could have built a major law firm, but I just really hate practicing law. So from there, that's when I figured it out, and that's when I really started studying copywriting, direct response, direct marketing, all of this stuff, because that's what Seth Godin's book really says. This is a direct marketing medium, but you don't have to be a scuzzball. You're not trying to buy list and spam people.
Yeah.
You're trying to build audiences and trust and all this kind of good stuff. And so that was my marketing education. I had none before that. So I was like a clean slate.
Yeah.
I didn't have to unlearn anything. And I feel fortunate for being that clueless. So then I started 2 real estate brokerages. They were nothing but websites. This was pre-Zillow,
Oh, wow.
all of that. At the time, it was just crazy, according to people. Now it's, oh, you were innovative. I was like, yeah, you were making fun of me back then. But those took off. That was my real first entrepreneurial success. I was much better at marketing than running a business. I tried to do it all myself. So when I started Copyblogger, I had a better perspective, and I immediately partnered with people to do the stuff I wasn't good at and stuck with what I was good at.
Smart, very smart. So you start Copyblogger. Today you've got Copyblogger Media, very large company, software company, media company, lots going on. What was your vision when it started? Was it where you are today? Was it anywhere near that?
No, I remember back in those days, I was a big fan of 37 Signals, and I was like, man, it's too bad I could never develop software because I'm not a coder, I'm a writer, at best. My only idea when I started Copyblogger, which again might sound crazy, was that if I build an audience, they will tell me what they need and I will sell it to them.
Yeah.
That was it. And that's exactly what we did, as vague as that sounds. But it was really that listening thing. The feedback you get specifically from an audience is not like market research because it's very real. It's these people, not this demographic of people. And we started with a training program. Then the year after, we got into the WordPress space because we were WordPress users, and we saw that for regular people, it was still very difficult to use. And that turned out to be the beginning of a huge marketplace that surrounds WordPress today.
Yeah, and the WordPress turned into basically custom software you guys are building now.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Very cool. So I think you started out as a blogger that was building an audience. Do you still consider yourself a blogger? How has that kind of changed? Are you still writing as much? Is it still important to you to be writing? Do you have that same passion?
Yeah, I'm always creating content as effectively. That's how I map out our go forward strategy. It's expressed in content, but I'm rarely on the blog. To answer your initial question, I stopped considering myself to be a blogger. Again, so nowadays, guest posts, guest contributions, that's a thing, right? A lot of people don't remember in 2006, that wasn't done. A blogger was that voice, and that was it. And I had no interest in being a blogger. I had interest in creating media properties, right? So the story was that I'd been working pretty hard on Copyblogger. Wasn't making any money yet. I didn't sell anything for a year and 10 months.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that. And I wanted to take a vacation. So there were smart people in the audience that I respected, and I reached out and said, hey, you want to cover for me so we can keep going? And the audience loved the other voices. And I'm like, oh, this is a thing. And of course, people wrote for free because they wanted to reach the audience I had already built. The only difference was, unlike much at the time and even now, I edited everything. Sometimes I would get submissions from people and I would rewrite the whole thing. And then people were like, wow, you write so much better on Copyblogger than you do on your own blog. And they were like, But I treated, you wouldn't submit to The Atlantic or something and expect to just get it thrown up there on a page, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not equating us with The Atlantic, but we had a
I think that's what you
editorial
just did, actually. Yeah.
function, Yeah, you caught that, didn't you? But yeah, it's an editorial function that carries to today. In our company, we don't have marketing, SEO, social, all this. It's just editorial.
Yeah.
It is all media focused, and all of those things are aspects of how, the machine works.
I think it's very important. I mean, if you're a writer today, whether it's for Copyblogger or for The Atlantic or New York Times, I think you need to understand SEO, and you need to understand, the visuals in the article and the social that is attached to it and everything.
Sure.
Very cool. So I think, the tool set that you guys use is probably very closely related to the software you build. But I like asking people about what tools they use. For instance, what phone do you use? Is iPhone, Android, or
iPhone 6.
iPhone 6?
Yeah.
And what type of software do you use to manage social accounts? Is it just basic native apps, or do you have Hootsuite, or
We have Buffer.
you use Buffer?
Right.
That's what
Now
you
we
love?
are building that into Rainmaker.
Oh, cool.
No offense to my friends at Buffer, but to us it makes sense that be integrated within the CMS because that's where you live. So we're doing that not to compete
And
with
WordPress
Buffer.
is doing that as well, so I don't think
Right.
it's...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean that just makes sense. Those type of things.
Are there any other pieces of software that you use and love that aren't necessarily built by your team?
Yeah, I mean a lot. That's kind of our thing. We build things for ourselves and then we sell them to make money because we didn't get venture capital. But I'm trying to think. We use Raven Tools a little bit. But for the most part with analytics, we use Google Analytics in very smart ways. There's ways that Annie Cushing, I don't know if you know her or not, but she teaches how to get the most out of Google Analytics. And it's incredibly powerful, just not the way Google gives it to you, right? So there's ways to divide it up. I'm trying to think. So Bitly we use for links, Buffer for social media posting. We are really low maintenance though. People are shocked outside of our own stuff that we are very adverse to shiny object syndrome. I mean, we do not go chase every little thing because fundamentally it's about the content and the distribution of that content. And I think so much of the time a new tool comes out and we go play with it and realize we didn't do the fundamentals.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so the measure of success at Copyblogger today, I mean, obviously you want a new customer and you want to sell them software. or training potentially.
And we want to retain the
Yeah.
customers that we have, which is
Well,
crucial.
do you have a metric? Are there a couple key metrics that you look at for success? Either bringing people through the funnel, is it emails, leads, or is it converting customers or reconverting old customers? What are the key ones
Yeah.
you look at?
So I love that concentric circle slide because it really is how we look at it. There is not one key point because if it doesn't happen out here, it's not happening in here. So again, not looking at it as a sales funnel is another thing. Now that we are a SaaS company, our customer success once they are already paying us is critical.
Yeah.
But I think so much of marketing is about new customer acquisition as opposed to retaining or getting people to come back. So that view in the audience mindset that they never leave the audience. When someone buys from you, they don't leave your email list. They go on a more important email list,
Yeah.
right? And so it's that mentality of the journey and the process, and it never really ends, that fuels us. So the answer is all of the above with that kind of holistic
Yeah.
mindset.
So you're tracking each level of the funnel. It's very interesting. I love that. We did an article a couple years ago on something called the fan loop, which is the same concept.
Right.
Realizing that the funnel doesn't start with just an email, that you have the social and you have these tertiary touch points that are very important.
Smart enterprise companies are getting into this with customer lifecycle and
Yeah.
things like that. It doesn't end, and that's a more
Yeah.
integrated and intelligent way to look at it.
Very cool. Okay, so to close this out, this is my closing question. Both personally and professionally, what's the best piece of content you've ever created? So, whether you had something that went viral on Facebook, I know you hate
Wow.
Facebook, or whether it was the first article you wrote for Copyblogger, what are those first things that jump out in your brain?
Well, okay, I'll tell this story to make it actually useful to the audience.
Okay.
I remember during the early days of Copyblogger, I was exhausted. I only wrote 2 articles a week, but I broke every rule of blogging. Like, you're supposed to publish every day. I published twice a week. Never over 250 words. I wrote 1,000-word articles. I'm kind of that personality type, but
Yeah.
at the time, that's exactly what worked because it wasn't what everyone else was
Yeah.
doing. So anyway, it was I believe a Thursday. I'm exhausted. It's late. It was a Wednesday, and I had to publish for Thursday. And so I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to do 5 grammatical errors that make you look dumb. And at the time, I did not know that that is a home run every single time. I just thought that was like phoning it in. It was just easy and funny, and I could just be, kind of off the cuff. So I went to bed. I woke up. It's on the Dig homepage, for those of you who remember Dig when it mattered. That's a huge amount of traffic and everything.
For the young people in the audience, it's like Reddit.
Yeah, it's like Reddit except meaner. So I was like, oh wow! So I learned something important there. So of course, many times after that, we
Yeah.
wrote about grammar. We are a writing blog, and they always went crazy viral. So the most popular post in Copyblogger history. This is a lesson in content repurposing. We took 3 of those posts, combined them into one infographic, nice design and everything, put it out there, and it's the most popular in history by an order of magnitude. 150,000 pins alone. I mean, last time I checked, I don't know. We have people like school teachers saying, "Can I print this out in my classroom?" I mean, it was
That's
amazing.
pretty awesome.
And
Yeah.
other than the design, it was completely repurposed content.
We love to hate on each other's grammar is the secret sauce.
God,
there.
and the debates, you've got, on one hand, you've got yeah, you guys are idiots, and then there's the other ones going, oh, you're just a grammar Nazi, and then they go at it, and you just step back, popcorn, it's fun, good times. On a personal level, I went to a conference, I think it was 2007 or something. So the story I didn't mention here was I got out of the real estate businesses because I wasn't really passionate about it. I really just wanted to succeed.
Yeah.
And I think entrepreneurs at
Well,
some level,
You wanted to be on Love It or List It.
well,
is what you
that
really wanted
or
to do.
whatever. But I knew the real reason is that I looked around in 2001 at what realtors were doing online. I'm like, oh, this is going to be easy. I mean, it was pretty bad, and funny, it still is. But anyway, so that year in 2005, I went snowboarding. I had a bad fall. Didn't realize it at the time, but I had a subdural hematoma.
Oh, wow.
That was a slow leak. 3 months later, like an idiot, I didn't go to the doctor with all the headaches and stuff until it was really far over. So they basically had to cut open my head and peel it back, craniotomy, that's what Lance Armstrong had, because the blood was pressing really hard against my brain. I was like that close to dying. So when you have something like that happen, you wake up and you're like, I'm not doing anything I don't want to do anymore, right? So that's
Yeah.
when I got out of those businesses and I decided to do Copyblogger, right?
Wow.
So I was always really adamant about Copyblogger. The message was, it's about them, not you. I was not a personal blogger. I was not sharing opinion. I was educating people, all of that kind of stuff. And I went to this conference in Chicago and was kind of inspired to tell that story, the first time I ever wrote anything personal. And that was the first time that I found that people do want to hear your personal story. I mean, the response I got to that post was amazing.
Yeah.
And I've also found, today wasn't a really good example because I didn't have time, but I found that when I share more of my personal stories, those are the presentations that are the most well regarded. So knowing the balance between how much of you, the real authentic you to share, and how much to focus on them is tricky, but it is a balance.
Yeah.
You know?
It's kind of a look behind the curtain.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, one more round of applause for Brian Clark, ladies and gentlemen.